Welcome to the market recap presented by Tackle Trading. Get in the game.
Good afternoon, Tackle Traders, and hello, YouTube. This is Frank coming to you with the market recap for the 1st of February. It is Friday. It was a very, broadly speaking, uneventful day as stocks closed pretty flat in the broad market. Amazon, of course, coming out with earnings, a little disappointing, gapping down, closing down a little over 5%, I believe, on the day. It looks like maybe a little profit taking. You did see some profit taking over in utilities today, but some interesting bounce as well. You saw some real estate traders coming out a little bit. Understandably so. Friday at resistance, what better time to take profits? And good afternoon, Michael. Good afternoon, everybody. I hope you all had a great day in and out of the market on a pretty laid-back little Friday overall, I would say. Looking ahead to next week, we still have plenty of earnings on the horizon. Good afternoon, Lorena. Great to see you as always. Google's the big name coming out next week, but you have Disney, you have Philip Morris, you have 20th Century Fox, NVIDIA, BDX, General Motors. So we still have plenty of big names reporting next week. Once we make it through next week, we will pretty much be out of the earnings season. I mean, there will still be companies to report. Of course there will, but we are just about out of this earnings season. Overall continues to be, a little more on the positive side, in my opinion, at least. We'll be definitely interested in seeing what Google decides to do with itself next week for sure. As we take a look at the overall market, it really is, when you think about the broad market, we really did very little. Up 0.9% on the S&P 500. NASDAQ, the big loser, Amazon's playing a part there, down 0.45%, up 0.25% in the Dow. Really, really dull, flat day on the close here for sure. Here you are on the S&P on the 15-minute chart. And as you can kind of see, here's our open. We kind of started to push up a little bit, chopped around a little bit, and basically just hung out. It really was one of those days in the market. Nothing has changed technically in my mind because of the way that it performed over on the S&P. As we look at the daily time frame, we continue to basically inch up, building off of that break from Wednesday and that confirmation from yesterday, closing above that downward trend line that maybe some traders are going to be looking at. 200 flat, still above us, probably the first thing to be keeping an eye out for. I'm not overly concerned. As you guys know, I will always pay attention, though. No new sell signals generated, in my opinion, at least, as we move into next week. Just taking a day. We had a really, nice Wednesday, Thursday. A day of rest is not a bad thing. So over on NASDAQ, really held up fairly well, I think, overall, considering the disappointment. That was Amazon's earnings. I don't think they were particularly bad. They were just disappointing to the market, at least for now. Of course, NASDAQ, they're a big part over there, just like our consumer discretionary ETF, as we'll see, just kind of hung in there, on the day. Not a lot to see. I still do really like where we are overall in the NASDAQ. Obviously, Amazon rebounding a little bit will help it work its way up into that 7,000 range. It is kind of hard to, not impossible, but a lot more difficult if we're having to drag Amazon along with us. Hopefully we don't have to. Hopefully it can find some footing and start to at least hold its own. We'll see next week how that goes. Over in the Dow, very similar day, working back into that longer term trend line that we saw on the weekly chart. From Crypto, who pointed it out the other day. That's why we decided to put this on. I'm not sure if you're here with us today, Crypto, or if you catch the video later, but we took it and put it on just for you, and I think it was a good call on your part. We did bump into it today. I'm not overly concerned. I don't consider that a sell signal by any means. I do find it interesting. Our other indexes have been able to take those trend lines out. We have not yet done it over on the Dow Jones. Did close above the flat 200 for whatever that is worth. I don't really think it's worth a lot, but it's certainly not worth negative points, right? So as we continue to overall see positive momentum, really whatever you may or may not think of this trend line, beyond that, again, we've talked about this before, there is still room to the upside for the bulls. Not a lot of resistance past that point. That's for sure. Whether you believe that that's something we need to be keeping a closer eye on or not, beyond that, there really isn't a lot until we work our way, close to 26. So should be interesting to see how that goes. Over in the Russell, just kind of carrying over barely from yesterday, breaking above that little week and a half long consolidation, closing above 1500 here today at 1502 and change. Still like where we're at. Still have room to go. Really don't have any resistance. Yeah, I know some might develop between now and this 1560 range, but until it does, there's just nothing in our way. Always what I like to see as a trader. So really pretty much just status quo. Not a lot has changed here today overall in the market, and most of our sectors are going to reflect that boring day as well. Over in the material sector, just kind of hanging out, right? Nothing substantial, nothing major. Did build off of, yesterday's, bounce off of that low point. So we did close in the green here today. Still, I think we have more, every day that passes, I think we have more information that as long as we hold this support line that we put in on that doji last week, the bulls are in control. That falters, we can have a much different conversation and likely would. But right now, for me at least, above 52, it is bullish. Obviously, we have that Dow DuPont miss on earnings, which they're certainly in my mind not bullish. Overall, I do continue to be comfortable with the sector. We still have room to work to the upside if that's the way it wants to go. Nice day in energy, in large part to Chevron and Exxon's earnings, making the market happy, at least for today. Both of them up pretty nice today, 3-4% for Chevron and Exxon respectively. So a pretty decent day, but you will notice, on the intraday, we ran into that. We did come off of the highs, and you'll notice it was kind of right back in that old floor range that we've been kind of keeping an eye on. So, at least for today, there was some profit taking when we got to that old floor zone. We remember it, right? We remember these prices. That's why we look at them so often. So, certainly a good start, good earnings, good response to the earnings for sure. Again, as for me, it's got to take that out. Until it does, it doesn't. When it does, I will look at it through a bullish lens for sure. And hey, Tanner, how are you, buddy? Good to see you. And I'm very interested to see if we can push through that 65. But it's got to do it. It really does before I'm going to get on board. I need a nice, clean, yes, this did close above this before I get too terribly excited. Very interested how this one plays out next week for sure. But good solid day today, and some good responses to some earnings. Valero didn't get quite the reception that Chevron and Exxon did, down a little bit today. But overall, it looks like so far so good on the earnings front with those energy stocks. Financials continue to go back and forth. We did close above 26 here today for the first time since we've tested it. We've bounced, and I think we closed right at 26 a week or so ago. But closing above it here today, we had Aflac come out with earnings and kind of some weird response, big back and forth type of a candle, no doubt about it. We still have some companies in this area to report, but a lot of the financials are behind us now. So I will continue to monitor it from I'm happy with where it is. I maintain a bullish overall stance. We are kind of sideways still, with that little tilt to the upside. We keep smashing into that 26 and trying again, technically closing above it. And while I don't think that's a huge deal, it means a little bit to me. We continue to show good strength and not a lot of profit taking over there. Would like to see it, have that day. And it's okay that it's not today, right? We always want it to be today because we're people. But, it's okay if it doesn't have to be today. But I would like to ultimately see that conviction candle get us through there. And I really, really will continue to really like this area, at least in the short term. I'll be keeping an eye, and really the big signal I'll be looking for is not that 26. It's actually going to be this 2640 or thereabouts, where we had this multiple test floor from last year. That's going to be kind of that big, or more major level of resistance. We've developed what is definitely a short-term ceiling here at that 26 mark. that can break, I will expect good price appreciation personally in the financials. Industrials just kind of continue to be well behaved. They really are treating us right these days as they just continue to, push forward. Not much of a day to day, but not a lot of volatility or anything like that. We are getting closer with every day to this old resistance, this 200 period moving average. Definitely something that I think we want to be keeping an eye on. We still do have some room. Would love to see a Boeing breakout next week. That would definitely help our cause in the industrial sector, I imagine, and maybe in the Boeing sector too, right? If we're doing anything with them. But overall, we continue to really, hold up within this space nicely. We know our resistance, or the short-term resistance is. We've established a nice point of support via this break that we saw earlier in the week. Gotta like where that's at, in my mind, at least. Same real situation. I think you can maybe say, I could maybe say I like industrials a little bit better than tech right now, but I feel pretty similar with the technology sector. Love the upside still available in this sector as we move forward. Once again, closing above what could be a support, an old level of support, closing above that trend line, moving averages catching up, pushing up a little bit. It benefited because Amazon, of course, is in the discretionary sector, and whereas NASDAQ, kind of was punished a little bit with the downward movement in Amazon. XLK didn't have to deal with it. So we were able to continue that positive momentum. Really, again, nothing's developed. Signs are still to the bullish side. I still really like the upside that we have available over here. I do think we can I don't think I'm quite there yet, but I think that we can kind of start to be, much like we have at least I have a pretty clear floor in mind at 52 or thereabouts on materials. I'm just about there on the tech sector here at that 64 mark. As long as that holds, I will probably overall be bullish within this sector, at least in the shorter term. Staples saw some profit taking here today as we had a really nice move yesterday. It's been one of those things, and we've kind of seen it together. And I think for the most part, we've been on the same general page. We've seen the bullish signals. We've respected the bullish signals. We've overall leaned to the bullish side because that's where our signals have been. Whether that meant we were trading or not, most of the time for me, it did not mean that. But we're certainly respecting those signals. But it has been a little bit, back and forthy, and I still don't like it for that reason. Much like the utility sector, we've got this trend line above us that is going to keep me away for the most part in the shorter term, as that is always something I will be watching out for. Interesting to see where this one goes. My opinion notwithstanding, I think your first level of support is going to be this breakout point. So if we are looking at this, from a bullish as opposed to bullish on the sideline view, like I personally feel is the approach I want to be taking, I think we can look at that breakout point as that first level of support, at least short term. Keep an eye on that 54, though. That is where we're going to be bumping in to that trend line. And while it may or may not mean anything, it certainly can mean things in the short term. We did see quite a bit of selling, and I want to take a look at the intraday on XLU with you guys because it was pretty interesting. Of course, we ran right up into and closed there yesterday, and then on the intraday here early really sold off. Now, we bounced very nicely off of that 50 period moving average. So we kind of hit that 50. That was a huge red candle at one point in time, chomping away over half of yesterday's gain. We worked into that 50 and buyers came scarfing it right back up. So there are definitely some believers right now based off of that price action, I think, within this sector. For me, I could easily become one, but I can't become one until we close above 55. So until then, I will continue to be on the sidelines. It has to prove me wrong. You guys know me well enough now to know that you've got to prove it to me. You got to prove it to me, and I'm nothing if not patient. And wimpy, both patient and wimpy. But a 55 close would be something interesting. I'm very interested to see how this continues to play out as we challenge this old trend line as some resistance. We'll see where it goes. Right now, for me, I could like it middle of next week if we break out. But until that happens, I certainly am not going to feel that way. I'll be keeping a close eye. Over in healthcare, a little bit of a back and forth day, but we did, much like utilities, kind of pull back to the 50. we pulled right back to this old resistance point that we broke out of here yesterday. And we really had a nice response, almost kissing it to the number here on the intraday, and a nice little rally off of that. So we definitely saw some buyers coming back in, a little bit on the mixed side of things for the healthcare earnings. I don't think you could really say it was a great or a terrible earnings season for these companies. So it's a little bit, some good, some bad. But overall, holding above that breakout, holding above those moving averages, I do overall continue to be bullish. However, if something does shape up to the bearish side, for example, somebody I definitely have in my watch list going into next week is AbbVie. We've got a pretty good level of support. I'm not necessarily expecting this support zone to break, but if we were to see that support zone break, I wouldn't be opposed to, or this type of a chart, I wouldn't be opposed to looking at it from that point of view. Overall, I do continue to like this area, and I like the space that it has to offer us. The nice clear path into 93 or thereabouts. Really like that there is room to work. Hey, we start to go the other way, we'll talk. Right now, I still like this area, much like tech, much like industrials, and not quite there. I like financials, but for a little bit of different reasons, and we don't have that space just yet. We still have a challenge. I like the sectors that have the space. Right. Of course, you may not agree with me, but we'll always have our reasons. Right. XLY, our discretionary, did see some profit taking today, large part Amazon earnings. Amazon, of course, is part of the discretionary sector ETF. And hey, Javier, good to see you, my friend. Talked to Javier a little earlier today. I talked to him in the clubhouse, and I was talking to him earlier, and I didn't realize it was the same Javier. So good to see you, my friend. Hope you're having a great day. Amazon took us down. Now we haven't changed anything technically, and it certainly hasn't done anything wrong from in my mind at least. Didn't close below anything that it shouldn't have. Didn't break any support, but we did see some good profit taking over in the discretionary sector. Again, big part of it when those big name companies we saw with Facebook basically almost single-handedly getting the communication services sector on track, at least in the short term, right? So when these big names, have major responses to their earnings, they definitely can take their sectors for a ride. So maybe we'll get a pullback opportunity. I think that would be really an okay thing. I wouldn't mind seeing that whatsoever. Right now, I think if you're kind of thinking about where support is, I think you're probably looking at a few different areas, very short term, about where we're at. This little, 2-time intraday resistance that we ultimately broke out of on Wednesday, that is going to be a short-term level of support. I would suspect not something major, just on an intraday level. You can see that's where we kind of settled in the last, 2.5 hours or so of the trading day. That should be our first line in the sand from an intraday perspective. On a more swingy perspective, right here, I will, continue to look at this kind of as that primary swing support zone. But we also could look at this old history that we have right in here at this 105 or thereabouts. We have seen some support bounces in the past. We saw a lot of consolidation there earlier in the month. Definitely a little bit of breakout happened there. So that's probably a line that we can look as a short-term support zone as well. That 105 is kind of the area I'll be looking at primarily as a potential, if we do pull back that far, as kind of that first place I'd be interested in from a bounce perspective. Again, with Amazon, depends a lot how they're going to perform. Are they going to go into a big sell-off? Or are they going to go sideways? Or are they going to rally, right? Again, they're going to have a big impact on that sector and anything that they're involved with. So over in real estate, we finally had a day of profit taking and understandably so. I mean, that was a very impressive run. It was just 2 weeks ago we were looking at it, closing above that old resistance and early in the week just kind of hanging around, not, consolidating, but not really doing anything. And then basically shoots up like a rocket into 33.50, stops for a day, breaks right through the next day, right up to 34, then of course into 34.50 or approximately there here yesterday, peaking out there today. Not the candle I wanted. I was definitely, and I still may get it. I would like to see, 2-3, more days of selling back into the 33.50 ballpark. and I would be very interested in some real pullbacks in the real estate sector. I may or may not get them. We'll just have to see. This has been a very strong area, and even on the intraday, folks said, hey, we're selling off too much. It got to yesterday's low, and they start jumping right back into it. Again, much like utilities, at one point, this was one giant red candle today, right? And we definitely saw some nice bounce off of yesterday's floor. It's not out of momentum just yet, I guess. We'll see where it goes. I really would like to see a pullback. And as you guys know, it doesn't hurt to ask, right? Give me 2-3 days selling, into Monday, Tuesday, into Wednesday, and then maybe we can talk real estate sector. Clearly, if you may or may not agree with that, do keep in mind, though, as you're looking at these guys historically, this is a historical important price point for this ETF. Beyond that, really, it's up to 35, and beyond that, sky's the limit, right? This is as high as we've ever been in this 35 markup here on this real estate ETF. So many of these stocks look very nice, breaking resistance, threatening to break resistance. They needed a pullback, so at least in my mind, that was one heck of a recovery, no doubt. So very nice, very nicely done real estate. Eventually, there was going to be some profit taking, and why not on a Friday, right? So we'll see where that one takes us as well. Bad day over in communication services. Not really able to build off of yesterday's momentum, but certainly not doing anything to suggest that yesterday's momentum cannot be sustained overall. We have continued to hold that break now for a second candles. Not a great looking candlestick, a little bit of a gravestone looking guy, but really nothing has shown sell signal. We're above trend, we're above resistance, above moving averages. So I'm going to continue to be okay with this guy. Going into next week, we saw the impact that Facebook had. Google can have that same impact on this ETF in particular sector as a whole, but certainly on this ETF because it is such a big part of it. So that's that one. Let's get that one behind us. If we can get an okay response to a Google report, might be a lot of fun in this sector going into the next quarter. So we'll have to see where that goes. But clearly building off of yesterday in the sense that holding that support for at least one more day. So not a lot to see, as you can kind of see going through our sectors, just kind of maintaining, taking a pause after the movement that we've seen the last couple of days. Not really anything changing trend, breaking even short-term moving averages. So really nothing to be unhappy about from a bullish point of view, at least as we work through this weekend and get going all over again here next time. VIX, of course, is really starting to just continue to drift, right? It's traders, investors, they feel like they've got a handle on it, right? They feel like the market's well more behaved right now. And as long as they feel that way, the VIX is going to continue to drift to the downside. Over in gold, we did see, kind of pushed up. We saw a little bit of selling off the top, much like yesterday, where we kind of got, ran up on the intraday, but kind of sold off of those highs. Nothing tremendous, to see here. A pullback is not something that we should not be mentally prepared for within gold here, at least at some point in time. You would think, well, maybe it will start next week. I don't know. Of course, every day that we're above 13 just confirms that breakout for that many more traders, right? Not every trader going to get in the first day or the second day or the third day or the fourth day. A lot of traders are waiting for that pullback to get in. So, every day that we're above it, is a good day of confirmation, in my opinion, no doubt. Love to see a little pullback if you're looking to get into gold. If you're already in gold, probably wouldn't mind it just running right up to 1360, right? But again, if you are new around here, one thing that I like at least about gold is there's not a lot of overhead resistance until that 1360 ballpark. So there's definitely room for this guy to rock and roll in the days and weeks and months to come. You did see some selling off of that high on silver. That's why, we always want to watch these floors. You never know the future, but, are we surprised that that's kind of where profit taking came in? I don't think we should be. That was a long-term floor, or at least an intermediate-term floor, worked into it, closed at it, broke it on the intraday yesterday, saw some downward movement off of that here today. Break above that, I think another nice bullish signal. Depending on how the pullback goes, we did catch ourselves at that old resistance zone on an intraday basis here today. If this is support and we start to see upward movement, for me, it's got to be the break. If we pull back a little bit further, back into these moving averages, back into this trend, this line right here, then that would certainly be something I would be interested in from a pullback perspective. So we will have to see, although if we get that deep of a pullback, I do anticipate I would probably prefer the gold chart from a pullback perspective. If we keep running in the metals market for new trades, I'll probably prefer silver because gold is a little more extended past the breakout point than I personally like for new entries. But we'll see where this one goes. Taking a little profits here today. Oh, our old friend natural gas filling up the rest of the space. One of the weirdest things, natural gas is, and on the one hand, it's been making some sense. On the other hand, it's been doing it way too violently, right? We've talked about this. We've looked at this support zone before. We broke this support zone, and we know our next level was here. Filled that space up pretty nicely, and for it, very well behaved. But overall, it continues to be very volatile. Again, very interested in going into next week's open because, as you guys know, until I get a mellow open, I'm not interested for myself by any stretch of the imagination. More signs to the bearish than the bullish right now, I would say, if we're kind of guessing where it's going to go, but that's not how I want to do business. If this support level does break that we're hanging out here today, really not a lot to hold us up until we work into that 260 range. So we've got a little bit of room to the downside. The problem isn't the space. The problem is the behavior, in my opinion. It might gap, halfway through that. It might open up at $3, so it's as wacky as it's been. So it's always fun. It's like, I don't know if you guys, I watch pro wrestling. I have, ever since I was a little kid. And this is, this is the pro wrestling of the stock market and the investing market right now. I think never a dull moment, sometimes a little bit outlandish. So, and maybe the most interesting thing to happen here today as we wrap up is the break and close above 55 on crude. Certainly a lot of us here have been looking at 55.50 as our numbers on crude. I've certainly been one of them. A close above 55. It is just one close. It is a Friday, but I am going to interpret that as a bullish signal. If we can continue that momentum, I will be looking at this more and more bullish. As long as we are above 55, I will personally be bullish on crude. Now, it's just one day, and it's not by much, 53 or 55.34. So, it is just one day. But one day is a lot more than an intraday break like we saw yesterday, right? And it all starts with one day, right? It all starts with holding that intraday break. If we are able to continue to push through this and hold this 55 break, I think 60 is or 59 is a reasonable place to go. Again, you think I'm keeping an eye on that utilities up trend line as resistance. I'm really keeping an eye on crudes. That number is going to put us around 60. If we work that way, we'll get a closer, a more specific number once we get into it as it develops. That will be, for me, you're out. You're not a bull there. You might not be a bear, but you're not a bull. But beyond that, we really don't have much in between. And so this is a very appealing development, in my opinion, because of that. Again, it's just one day. It's just a little bit of a close, but it all starts there, right? So a little upward movement could get me pretty excited about crude, no doubt about it. I will, of course, me, I will be keeping an eye on the 59.60 range. And that will be my target, not a penny beyond it, for better or worse. So, but a nice, interesting development on a kind of a boring day. Again, much like we've seen, not yesterday and Wednesday, but for much of the week, last week and early this week, been more of a stock moving market than a market moving market, if that makes sense. And today was definitely one of those days. Broadly, didn't really do much. Saw some stocks moving, saw some good earnings reports. Saw some bad earnings reports, but not a whole lot changing in the broad market. Of course, I'm about ready to head over to the scouting report meeting where the other coaches are probably already rocking and rolling. So I'll go derail that and add a little extra time to their afternoon. We'll be putting together our scouting reports and our newsletter for our pro members here for you guys here tomorrow. So always exciting for that. Be sure to, of course, get through those reports this upcoming weekend. But of course, it is the weekend, so make sure you are spending some time doing the things you love with the people that you love. If you're doing the Super Bowl thing, I hope your team wins. We'll see where that one goes. I don't really have a favorite there. I just want to see a good ball game. So that I want a good barbecue and a good ball game, and I will call the Super Bowl a victory. The Super Bowl never matters to me unless the Denver Broncos are in it. And in that case, I am a complete shut-in. It's been a while, it's been a couple of years now. So, but of course, guys, it is always my pleasure, and it's always great to see you guys. And I certainly appreciate everybody's time. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you are new around here, so you can be alerted to any new videos that we've got going on over here. And be sure to head on over to our Twitter account at Tackle Trading if you do the Twitter thing, to keep up with some of the things that we're watching each and every market day. As you guys know, I am kind of the curator of the Team Tackle Twitter list. So if you need me to get you added on that list, just find me. I will get you taken care of. You can find me on Twitter at FrankMartin23, or you can find me in the clubhouse and our shows. You know me. I'm not ever too far away. So if you'd like me to get you added, just let me know. I'd be happy to do so. With that, ladies and gentlemen, get through those watch lists, get through those reports. Have a great weekend doing the things you love with the people that you love. Be ready to rock and roll another exciting earnings week here on Monday. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, get the heck out of here. Have a fantastic weekend, and I will see you on Monday. Bye, everyone.